Hey, welcome to The Feast Life, where we empower you, the modern homeschool mom, to create a life and homeschool you love. I'm Julie Ross, the creator of the award-winning curriculum A Gentle Feast, a homeschool veteran of over 20 years, and a certified Christian life coach. Charlotte Mason said, life should be all living, not a mere tedious passing of time. So on this show, we seek to savor the feast of life. So go get your favorite beverage and pull up a chair. You're welcome at this table. What if helping your child choose a career wasn't just about checking boxes, but discovering what truly makes them come alive? In today's episode of The Feast Life, I'm talking with career development expert Melissa Palmer from the Career Planning Studio. With over 25 years of experience in higher ed, talent development, and executive coaching, Melissa brings deep wisdom and practical tools for homeschool parents who want to equip their children for a meaningful future. We talk about moving beyond outdated advice like good grades, go to college, land a stable job, and instead focus on how to guide our kids, and maybe ourselves too, toward more purposeful work rooted in their unique superpowers, passions, and values. Whether your teen has no idea what they want to do or too many ideas, this conversation is packed with insights to help your family prepare for an ever-changing career landscape. Let's dive into today's episode.
Great.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Feast Life podcast. I'm your host, Julie Ross, and today I am here with Melissa Palmer from the Career Planning Studio. Thank you so much, Melissa, for being willing to come and talk to us today.
Thank you. It's so great to be here, and I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, so I met you in real life. Amazingly, that still happens. And you were telling me what you did, and I was like, oh my goodness, like I need to have you on my podcast because you have 25 years of experience working with in multiple different realms of people, but basically on helping them with career planning. And I know as homeschool parents, we feel
Yeah.
such a weight of, am I actually going to prepare my child for the quote unquote real world? What are we working towards here? And it's not just we're going to check off all these boxes and make sure we taught all these different subjects, and then that's going to magically make our children have this amazingly wonderful, fulfilling life. Like we want to also help navigate because there are so many options and careers are changing at such a rapid pace these days that we do want to give them the
Yes.
skills and the knowledge they will need for their future. But again, that's always changing. So I'm like, I have to talk to you. So before we dive in, how
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your story. Like, how did you make a career out of helping people with careers?
Yes. I'll give you the shorter version. I could talk a long time about that. But when I was in graduate school, I studied a combination of counseling, career development, and higher education administration. And I fell in love with figuring out how do people go about understanding themselves and then understanding the world of work so that they can make a connection that feels meaningful to them. And so, how I'm always fascinated by the future of work and how we take this idea of building a prosperous career, prosperous in the best sense of that word, the most holistic sense, right? That includes satisfaction, impact, as well as economic prosperity, economic viability. And so we have to pay attention to a number of different factors in order to be able to manage that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm so glad you're here to talk to us about this because I feel like we do feel such a weight as parents, but we often have no idea what to do. And for most of us, it was okay, you go to school, you go to college, you get a good job, and you just stay in that till you retire, and that's how you live your life. And then we never really explored
Yeah,
things, especially I feel as I know growing up, it was like, okay, you could be a teacher, you could be a nurse, you could be a secretary. Which of these do you want to be? And I was like, okay. No one explored like the thousands of
right.
options with me, right? It was like, oh, you like teaching your Cabbage Patch dolls? You should become a teacher. Like it was just very, here's your path. And I think a lot of us as adults now are
Yes.
seeing like, oh, wait, maybe that wasn't the right way to go about that. So how do you see like homeschool
Right.
parents even
Right.
starting with this question of how do I help my kids navigate their future?
Yes. Yes. So first of all, I just want to validate. Absolutely. And there was maybe a time period, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago, maybe 40 years
Yeah,
ago,
I'm aging
when
myself.
all of us, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's our parents or grandparents, but where the cost of education was extremely affordable. And there were opportunities. If you were a certain gender and race, you had lots of opportunities. And obviously that pool of opportunity was smaller and smaller for people of color, for women. But within that, you could wander your way into whatever it is you were going to do. And if you had a degree, you had lots of options. But those days are long gone. Okay. So the stakes are much higher. The cost of education is astronomical. So we just don't want to wander our way into it. And when we have that degree, we can never assume that degree alone is going to land us
Oh,
a job.
now that I have two kids out
It
of college, let me tell you, that's 100%
it
true. It is not your golden ticket anymore at all.
No, it is not. At best, you need that education in whatever form, and we can talk about that. You need experience. So, experience, whether that's in the form of an internship or an apprenticeship or something while you're in school. And then you need connections, you need relationships because opportunity almost always comes out of relationships.
Yes.
So, one of the reasons I think it's difficult for parents to guide their kids is that they themselves don't know or understand what's the roadmap. How do people, any people, figure out what should I be doing? It feels a lot of people will describe it to me. I feel like I'm just in fog. I don't know how to do what it is I need to do. I feel
Nobody teaches
stuck.
us this stuff. Like this would be really beneficial compared to like pre-calc. Like really.
Yeah, yeah,
Someone teach us
100%.
math here.
Yeah, 100%. So I'd like to tell you what the six pillars are that we have to pay attention to. And these are true for people that are just starting out, people that are midway through their career. It's applicable to moms who have been home for their kid with their kids and now they're ready to step back in, but they don't know what.
Oh, that
And
happens
it's
a lot.
also applicable to people that are just in the final chapter and they're trying to decide what's that final act going to be.
Yeah.
So the first pillar is identify your superpowers. And this is more than just what your strength, like what you're good at. Okay. So your superpowers are the things that if we were to think of energy and engagement like a fuel tank, these are the things that are energy additive.
Mm.
Your engagement peaks, your energy peaks. And so when you're involved in an activity that aligns with your superpowers, you feel energized by it. Sometimes we call this a state of flow. Maybe you lose track of time. We want to identify what are those superpowers for you. And again, this applies to adults at any stage. Moms can be
Right.
thinking about this as they even have different activities that they're involved in. Where does my engagement and energy peak? And
Mhm.
we want to put some language around that because as a career coach, if I know what your superpowers are, now I know the building blocks to the work that's going to be most meaningful for you, where you're going to have the most energy and likely perform best in.
Right. Yeah.
So those are really key pieces of this puzzle that we want to just think about and figure out. So let's talk about that then for kids. What does that look like? Okay, the first pillar is identify your superpowers.
And I love this because kids
And
really relate to the whole
yeah,
superpower. I love that.
yeah, 100%. Okay. And I think this is especially relevant for homeschool families because their kids tend to be very high achieving. They can perform well at lots of different things. And so if we use performance as the metric for what you're good at or what you should do more of, that actually doesn't help us much because most kids could say, I got an A in a class, but I
Right.
hated it.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's okay, but how many, especially girls, get trapped into STEM careers because they got A's in math? They got A's in science and they said, "Oh my gosh, you should do more science. How about engineering? How about," and maybe that's a fit, but just because someone can perform well at something doesn't mean it's a superpower.
Mm.
Because the definition of
Really good
strength
distinction.
that I like to use is inward.
Mm.
What do you do that when you do it, you feel stronger? So we're
Oh,
doing an internal calibration here.
yeah.
So then for our kids, we can totally tune into whatever their age, what do they naturally attend to? When left to their own devices, what do your kids do? Where do they spend their time? What could they do for hours on end and not necessarily think twice about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
These are really good things to pay attention to and then mirror back to your child or your teen. Oh, I noticed that you just spent 2 hours on that. Tell me about it. What did you like about it? What was interesting about that? I remember when our son was in, I can't remember if it was like seventh grade. It was the early days of the internet, and he had discovered this website that let you build very simple websites. Again, early days of the internet. It was, but he thought this was amazing. He would spend, if I let him,
Yeah.
hours
Right.
doing this. Okay. And I said to him one day, I'm like, Brendan, wouldn't it be cool if you had a job where you got paid to do what you're doing right now? And he looked at me like, that you're crazy. No one would pay me to do this. He was just playing. Today, he's 30 and he's a UX researcher and he does human computer interaction, right? So the threads of our kids' life work
Mhm.
often go all the way back to childhood. And so we pay attention to that, we can attend to it, we point it out, become a student of the variety of ways that we understand human personality, strengths, gifts. If you have the opportunity to take something like the Myers-Briggs type indicator or the Enneagram or the Strengths Finder, these are fantastic tools
Yeah.
for just raising your awareness of your unique personality and interests and skills and gifts. The Gallup Strengths is another one. DISC.
Yeah.
There, for your listeners, self-directedsearch.com is a great tool for less than $20. It's good for teenagers.
Okay, what was
Um,
it again? Can you say it?
it's called the
Okay.
self-directedsearch.com.
Okay.
And it's a great assessment. It's a career assessment based off of the work of John Holland. Sometimes it's called the Holland Codes. And it is an orientation to the world of work. So when you take it, it gives you a sense of, okay, what general career cluster is likely going to be a good fit with my unique interests, my unique skills. And it's just a starting point
Yeah.
to,
Right.
to get out of the fog. All
Mhm.
right, so I'm going to stop there on the pillar one, which is superpowers,
Yeah.
and
No,
just give you a chance to
yeah.
comment or ask
No, that's great.
questions.
I think because we look at, okay, so my kid is really good at this. So this must be where they need to go. So I'm so glad you distinguished between performance and what actually does light you up and that you could just do forever and it doesn't feel like work. And
Yeah,
that's really just
yeah,
such a wonderful way to look at it. And it might be hard when they're kids and they're like, I want to play Fortnite
yeah,
forever. But to look at other
yeah,
areas too where they
yeah.
can zone in on something and just seeing also like where they light up as humans in terms of their interaction with other people too, I think is really cool. The interact. Do you like being alone? Do you like being alone?
Yeah.
I wish I would have taken the Myers-Briggs test before I went into college to become a teacher because being in front of a classroom all day
Mhm.
exhausted me because I'm an introvert. And I was like, someone should have told me that.
Yeah,
So, yeah, having
exactly.
insight. Yeah,
Yes,
right.
yeah, because how well you know yourself is so your ability to choose a direction that's going to be a good fit for you is directly correlated to your level of self-awareness. So the better you know yourself, the better you're going to be able to evaluate and filter which path would be a good fit for me.
Which is hard for kids because they don't necessarily have that, but you can work to help them develop that awareness, especially teenagers.
Exactly. You're just developing it, noticing over time. What do they like? What do they not like? And like you said, why? And let's just use video games as an example. Even there's rich information you can mine out of that. Because what I would want to know is why or what about it do you like? Because I've talked to people who say, I love video games. And when you ask them, really, it's all about the strategy.
Hmm.
It's strategy, it's the levels, it's the problem solving. And then other people have told me before that they like connecting with other players in other parts of the world. So there's that connection and human element that comes into the game, maybe the teamwork. Those two answers point us in completely different directions.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. So if it, even if it's, I love music, I love sports, I love video games, and you might say that doesn't have much to do with anything. It's actually something that you can really start to peel back the layers of it, of what is it exactly? What's that secret sauce in it that you find interesting? And then how do we identify what that thread is?
Hmm.
Because again, it's a building block for us to then go to actually gonna skip well,
Yeah, you
pillar,
don't have to say all six, or you can touch on.
yeah, yeah. Let me go. So, pillar number three is exploring options.
Okay.
So, that's where we then say, okay, given this portfolio of interests or skills or values or strengths that we see in our kids, then we, or in ourselves, we want to say, okay, now what can I do with that? Who needs what I have to offer? And then we start a process of exploration. And this is where parents move from being a clarifier or a reflector to their kids to now they're moving into, okay, how do I connect? How do I help my kids connect with options that are available to them? And this also might be a little hard for parents when they're like,
Yeah.
I have no idea,
I don't know
right?
any veterinarians or what. I don't know.
I have no idea. So, how would I know? But you are their link to the outside world. So, when your kids are little, it's really important that you're talking to them about jobs and occupations.
Mm.
When you take them to the pediatrician, mention to your kids, like, oh, this person had to study a long time to be a doctor. And the nurse came in, and here's how the nurse ended up being able to do this. And maybe you have the opportunity to ask the doctor, hey, how did you choose? Did you always know you wanted to be a doctor? And your child is just going to be listening. Like, oh, people, there's a process to how people figure out what they're going to do. And everywhere you go, you can just notice jobs and occupations. So you're raising their work salience, right? How their attention to this is how adults function. This is how adults make money. This is how adults serve and use their skills, and I can do that too. So that's the first thing. The other thing for, especially now with teens, and I mentioned the self-directed search.com, you can also go to, and I'll provide these
Okay.
links as well so we can put them in the show
Yeah.
notes.
There we go.
The ONET online. So the US Department of Labor puts out phenomenal resources on careers.
Okay.
So the ONET online, and you can navigate to the ONET interest profiler, is another way you can access almost the same assessment where they're going to assess how you answer certain questions with almost 1,000 occupations
Wow.
and give back to you like, oh, okay, based on how you answers these questions, here are some simple occupations that could be a good fit for you.
Yeah.
And you can actually do that. The Myers-Briggs type indicator, for example, is not a career assessment. It's a personality assessment, but personality often has career implications. So you could take that assessment and just Google careers for, and then insert personality type,
Mhm.
and you'll start getting ideas, things that maybe you haven't even heard of before. And that's good. That's what we want, right? We want to expand the options that could potentially be available. And then you just start researching them. So I mentioned the ONET is a great place for occupational information. You can find out detailed information about the skills required, knowledge required, tasks, work activities, job outlook, salary, all kinds of things. So you just start to vet, would this path be a good one? And if I were going to do this path, what would I need to do? Do I need to go to a university? Could I go to a community college? Like, what kind of skills and knowledge would I need to go down that path? So that's a great way to just start researching.
Yeah, that's great. And there's so much out there that like and you don't even know. Like I said, like you're so limited if you're only thinking of the careers that you actually know of because there's so much
Yeah,
out there that you don't, or your kids are looking around going, my uncle does this and my mom does that. And so these are the only careers I know of. So like I want to be that when I grow up, but they don't understand that there's like thousands of more jobs out there.
yeah,
And
right,
knowing what they
right.
require is so important. Like I had someone on from Degree Free, and she was just saying like how few jobs actually require a degree. And a lot of the more common trend is
Yeah,
certifications. And even my daughters that graduated from college, it's like we're looking at
yes.
these jobs and they're like, you need the certifications. Like they're all like things you can do online that take a couple months, but we just paid all this money for this degree.
So you really want to know ahead of time. It's begin with the end in mind. And there are lots of reasons that a young person would go to college and
100%.
university
Right.
that are not just about what job am I going to get on the other side of that experience, but it is such a huge investment now. The cost of higher ed is it's mind-boggling. So we want to be very intentional about what's the ROI, what's the return on that investment that we're looking for on the other side.
Yeah.
Because if you're not careful, I've had graduate students who finish and their job opportunities are no different than before they did that graduate degree.
Wow.
This research component is
Mhm.
really important. And then when
Fun
you
too. I like research.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is so much fun. There's two other websites that I want to mention. And
Okay.
again, we can put this in the show notes, but careeronestop.org is another great place to look for job search tools, career exploration. They have lots of resources. And then the Occupational Outlook Handbook.
Okay.
And these all have their roots in the US Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, but they're just all three great tools for that sort of big picture, what direction should I even be pointing in?
That's
And
great.
also, what am I missing? Is
Mm-hmm.
there something I could do that I'm not even sure about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the reason it's so important that we start with pillar one is that you and I both know that there are jobs that exist today that aren't going to be around a
Mhm.
few years from now. And there are jobs that we don't even know that are going to be here in 5 years. So we want to make sure that we're building on the DNA of our kids, like what feeds them, what are those skills, those things that they're naturally drawn to, because that's not going to change.
Mm.
That's pretty constant.
Yeah.
So we want that to be the foundation, the building block.
Yeah, I love this too because I feel like homeschooling really helps with some of the things you're saying, like about the superpower and about the exploration, because you do have the time for your kids to do some of this research and then also to try some things while they're still in high school, to find
Yes.
people in your community that they can go talk to, interview about whatever job it is, get
Yeah.
skills, even doing some of this stuff, volunteering, internships, whatever
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
they wouldn't have if they were in school all day. So see these kind of teen years as even more investment into these options. So you have
Mhm.
your superpower, you've explored some options.
Yeah.
Now what?
So I want to mention one more
Yeah.
thing about the exploration piece, and then we can take it to the next step. And that is that it's really important that you view that exploration as part of how you're vetting what you want to do and mitigating risk. Because the last thing we want to do is have our kids run down a path and then be like, oh, shoot, that's not it. And then they have to circle back and it's you've lost time, you've lost money. So I like to encourage people to think about it like prototyping. All right, I think this might be a good idea. For example, our middle daughter, when she was in high school, we did some assessments with her and came up with a list of possible occupations. And when she got the list, some of them she had never even heard of before. So, speech language pathologist was one of them. And I'm okay, out of this long list, we're going to do enough just research online to see if we can come up with your top 8 or 10.
Okay.
And then we're going to do enough research on those to narrow it down to your top two.
Okay.
And so she did that, and speech language pathologist was on there, and she's, Mom, I don't even know what that is. I'm like, great, put it on your list. Let's just research it. The more she learned about it online, the more she was like, huh, this is interesting. I think maybe I would like that. Okay, so it made it into her top two. The next step then is talk to people who are doing those jobs.
Yeah.
Get your kids connected to them. So we had our daughter, she did a couple shadowing days with several different SLPs who were working in everything from a NICU unit to a school and private practice. And she just got to hang out with them and observe them. And that really helps solidify, yeah, this is it. This is what I want to do. And so as your kids are starting to express interest, you want to think of it literally like, all right, we're going to come up with a list of 8 possibilities for what you might want to do next.
Cool. Yeah.
Not for the rest of your life
Right.
necessarily, but just what do you think would be fun to do? And then do enough research just online. And I can provide some resources as well, and people can find out about it. We'll talk about that at the end, but careerplanningstudio.com/more for some ideas and resources. And I just lost my train of thought.
You're talking about that's what I mean. You're talking about your daughter and becoming a speech, which I love. And I do feel like that is so important because sometimes you don't know if you don't like something or if you do something till you actually do it. Like I can say,
Yeah.
oh, this is
Yeah.
a fun job, but till you actually go and you see what the people like, I wanted to be, I remember in high school, wanted to be a television news anchor. So
Mhm.
I went and I shadowed the news anchor from our like hometown. And I was
Excellent.
like, I do not want to do that. I was like, okay, take that one off the
Yeah.
list. But that was great information and knowledge to have. And so
Exactly.
having that network, even,
Hmm.
even if these aren't people that you're calling to see if your child can shadow, like getting them the skill of being able to
Hmm.
call
Yeah.
to an adult and say, here's what I'm interested in. Can I come do this? What a valuable skill you're giving your kids.
Yeah. And if a parent's, I don't have any engineers in my network. How would I even do that? I would encourage you to think, is there a neighborhood Facebook group that
Mm,
you're a part
good.
of?
Yeah.
If you have a church or synagogue community, or just where are the places that you can
Network.
kind of put it out and
Yes.
say, hey, anybody know a fill in the blank? LinkedIn obviously is a phenomenal tool for this. And if you could certainly connect with people on LinkedIn and find people who are doing different types of jobs, but reach out and just say, hey, I think my son or daughter might be interested. Would you be open to having a conversation with them? Would you be open to them coming to your workplace to see what you do? You may have to ask 5 or 10 different
Right.
people for someone to be like, sure, why not? Come on. But that's all right. That's okay. That's what it takes. You have to be really proactive in doing this, but it will save your son or daughter so much time. So imagine if you had gone to school, Julie, to be a TV anchor and you had studied journalism, and then you get to the very end and you're like, oh, this is not it.
Yeah. Such a waste.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we want to kind of speed that up, bring that earlier on in the process. And it's entirely possible. Again, when we start with, all right, what are the personality traits and characteristics of your son or daughter? Just start to notice, what do they tune into? And then we're thinking, okay, as that becomes more developed and more refined, you're just thinking, huh, interesting. Wonder what kind of jobs actually require someone to do that, to
Mm.
do the very thing that No one has to tell them, hey, you should really do more of, just like with my son, no one had to say, hey, you should really spend 3 hours in front of the computer trying to figure out how to get a website to do X or Y. It's interesting when people who love their work talk about their work, they almost always use the word fun.
Mm.
And there was a study done on the brain, the brain activity in people who are doing work that they are saying that they love, right? So there's some sense of engagement and flow. And what they found is that the brain activity was identical to what's happening in the brains of children when they're playing.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much.
Isn't
Because
that amazing?
we talk about all the time. It's so important to let kids play and be curious. And we
Yeah,
think as adults, like we can't do that anymore. But no, you actually can. And you can get good
yeah.
and you can enjoy it.
Yes. Yeah. And it's not that the bar is actually not that high. We're not saying you have to you have to find a
Right.
job that uses your superpowers all the time and you love your work all of the time. The ADP Institute of Research did a global study, 36,000 global workers
Wow.
who reported that they loved their jobs. And what they found was that they played to their strengths just 20% of the time. And remember, our definition of a strength, and I'm borrowing from Marcus Buckingham here, who helped develop the Gallup Strengths Finder, is that a strength is when you do this thing, you feel stronger.
I love that. Yeah.
So just 20% of the time,
Mm.
they reported that they love their work. And that's a pretty low bar
Yeah.
for most of us as
Yeah.
adults to think, oh, okay, I don't have to find something that it's all
Every day
rainbows
is
and
sunshine and
bunnies
rainbows.
and exactly, exactly. If just 20% of the time I'm
Mhm.
doing work that plays to my strengths, I'm going to be really satisfied with that.
Yeah, that's great. And I think too, just even like for the homeschool moms that are listening, if 20% of your day you're doing things that play to your strengths and the things that make
Mhm.
you feel stronger, that you just,
Yeah.
I could, I love doing this. And then, yeah, there's laundry and dishes, and I might not lay up as much or doing math problems, but then that's
Yeah.
okay because you have this part of your day where you are doing these things that just come so easy and naturally to you. And for me, that was always like reading to my kids. I could just do that forever and ever in a million years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or being out in nature with them. Time just goes so fast. So think about those things too as I'm,
Yeah.
and then talk to your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love being out. I could just do this forever. Is there anything you love that you could just do forever? Those kind of things. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have these superpowers,
Yeah.
and then we
Yeah.
have, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, as a mom too, if you find yourself especially drained by the work that, parts of if you're just exhausted by it, I would encourage you to think about what are the pieces of what you're doing that energize you and which are the pieces that suck you dry. And
Mhm.
how can you expand the parts that energize you? And are there ways you can outsource or change or do it differently? Maybe partner with another mom who has opposite strengths. We sometimes, as moms, can get into this fall trap to this myth of the ideal mom, right? If we were a really good mom, we would be able to
You can do everything, 100%.
list the hundreds of things, right? But the reality is that many of those things are actually psychological opposite. Okay.
Mhm.
So the mom who's good at being spontaneous, fun, drop everything and go whatever is the psychological opposite of the mom who's able to create a tight schedule and follow it and
Yes.
enjoy structure. And yet, sometimes as moms, we feel like, oh, I should be more flexible. Oh, wait, I need a schedule. It's like you put yourself in this bind
Yes.
rather than just, okay, this is what I do naturally and I'm good at it. And I'm going to embrace that. And the piece that doesn't come as naturally to me, I'll find some workarounds.
Yes, that's 100% exactly what I teach my moms in my programs. Like,
Mhm.
operate out of your zone of genius, delegate,
Yes.
get help for the rest.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
do that in your career too. So it's great that it all parallels together.
Yeah. And you mentioned your zone of genius, which is what we're trying to push toward because you have a huge zone of competence. You have hundreds of things you can do and do reasonably well. And then you have a somewhat smaller zone of excellence But what we really want to know is what's that zone of genius? What do you have the potential to be better than most other people? Not in an arrogant sense, but just there's so much alignment there with how you're wired, how you're made, what your gifts and skills, interests, values, calling, it all wraps up. And when we have alignment there, it's just fun. There's so much fun
I
there.
love
It's a
what I do. It's so
light.
fun. I'm like, I get paid to do this. This is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're a great example of, oh, this is how work should be.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I went through many, I think as most entrepreneurs do, right? Trial
Yeah.
and error and things like that to get to the path to get where I am. But like, if we can help our kids on that journey, that's even better. So after we've explored some ideas, what do you recommend we do next?
Mhm. So once you have explored some ideas and you've researched them, then you've actually talked to people who are doing whatever it is you're thinking about doing next. And in the process of talking to people, you're starting to build the relational bridge to where you want to go next. Okay. It's rare that anyone can do this in isolation. So it's important that you're just starting to build your team of people who are going to support you as you go through that process. So I mentioned in high school, my daughter shadowed SLPs, and those were all SLPs she stayed in contact with while she was in school
Wow.
when she needed to do different projects, different a fellowship year, job searching, she was just very intentionally starting to build that network of other adults who were supporting her, helping her, guiding her, because all of our kids will get to the point where we can no longer help them. I don't know the inner workings of what it's like to be an SLP, so I can't guide you with that, but I can help facilitate connections with the people who can. So that's really important. And again, these are lifelong skills. This is not a once and done. So when you're going through these different stages or steps in the process, you're going to revisit. It's circular. You're going to try some things and then figure out, oh, I like this, but I don't like that. And it might lead to this. And let me go talk to some people. And oh, no, that's not what I thought it was. All right, let me circle back here. And you're constantly refining
Mhm.
your self-awareness and your knowledge,
Yeah,
right?
100%. You're always learning and connecting. I think it's so good for parents to hear too, because a lot of us came from this kind of standardized, streamlined education model where it was like you go through these steps, you go to college, you get this job, and then you
Yeah.
stay there for 30 years. And then
Yeah.
a lot of adults, whether it's maybe a mom needs to go back, get a part-time job, or their kids are like graduating and they're looking at, okay, now I'm gonna have an empty nest. I want to back and have a career. Or maybe their spouse is wrestling with these questions of, I got into this job and I'm like, I don't even want to be doing this anymore.
Yeah.
Or we're trying to help our kids navigate those things. We have to realize that it's not that path and it's not
Mhm.
systemized and streamlined. And that might be have been your parents or you or your grandparents, but that's not the case. That sometimes it
Yeah.
does take this. Try it, see if you like it. What do you like about it? Okay, like this, I
Yeah.
don't like that. Now I'm going to try this that might not even have existed 2 years ago. Again, it's the ability to evolve and change, but you're always going back to these kind of questions that you're asking, which I think,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And young people who are entering the workforce today are likely to have 12 to 18 jobs.
are you
And
serious?
I am completely
Wow.
serious, 12 to
Wow.
18 jobs. And depending on the research, which is not great research because I don't know that anyone tracks this, but you'll see as many as 6 career changes
Okay.
over the
I definitely
course of
believe
that
that. Yeah.
12 to
Oh,
18
wow. Okay.
jobs, right? So
Not even 12 to 18 jobs in this, like you were an accountant here, now you're an accountant here. You're talking like different career paths completely.
12 to 18 jobs and then up to 6 different careers, which would be like I'm an accountant over here, and now I'm doing something. Maybe it's ancillary to accounting, maybe it's something completely different, but career changes are more and more common. And part of that is because the workforce is changing rapidly. And it's also the case that our kids will more likely have a portfolio career. They will more likely have, maybe they have some type of side gig that they have going on. They might have two or three things that they're doing. And that's a very different. My dad
Oh,
worked at the
I-
same employer his
30 years too.
entire life, and then he retired.
Yep, I do.
That doesn't exist
Yeah.
anymore. And again, I don't know that ever existed for women, for minorities, for other marginalized communities. We've got more of a matrix here that we're trying to figure out, and a portfolio career is often how we put those pieces together so that if you're taking time out of the workforce to raise kids, you may still have some things you're doing on the side that you love doing that are revenue generating, but they're not your whole life.
I love the idea of a portfolio because that really does relate a lot to homeschooling, especially the approach that I teach parents that we're providing our kids a wide and varied feast. So it's not, oh,
Mm,
you're interested in Legos, so we're going to spend the whole year only learning about Legos. It's no, we're still going to provide them all these different opportunities, art, music, poetry, reading really great books, all the sciences, all the times out in nature, that kind of thing. But because you don't know what your kid is going to stick with or what's going to be impactful or what thing they might need to pull back out of their pocket like 10 years from now
mhm.
and be like, oh, I remember when we learned all that classical music. Here you go.
Yeah,
It's shaping their person because we don't know. So it's not, oh, you're really good at engineering. We're only going to do STEM 80% of our day and spend 20% on these other subjects. You're really doing your kids a disservice because they need this wide feast because we don't know what the
yeah,
future.
yeah.
And you work with so many adults. I'm curious, like, what do you see in adults that make them successful no matter what career path they're using or whether they're changing their career path or not? That could be something as homeschool parents we can learn from that we can be focusing on with our kids that actually gives them that really not just skills for one profession, but skills to be successful no matter where they go.
Yeah, yes. That's a great question, and I'm going to answer it. And I also want to say something about what you said just a minute ago, because I'm imagining that there are probably a lot of moms listening who are like, oh my gosh, one more thing I have to do.
Yes,
One
thank you
more
for bringing that up.
thing
Yes,
I
right.
need to like manage with my kids. And especially if you feel like you're already drowning,
Yeah.
this conversation can be like just the last straw that knocks you out.
We don't
And
want that.
what I want to suggest is that just as you're going through whatever curriculum you're doing, however you're structuring your kids' education, just think about, oh, how could I use an assignment or a paper that they're already having to do, but tweak it just a little bit so that maybe they're using it to research a
Mhm.
career path, or they're using it to understand different ways in which we study human strengths or personalities, right? Like perhaps just think about that curriculum and say, okay, how can I be intentional about using what we're studying to add a career component to it? To whether that's just raising awareness around the world of work, spending time, we're going to research, hey, how about if we learn how do you research careers? How do, and some of the resources that I'll provide are places that you could do some interesting stuff. If you're doing math, maybe you're looking at salary and cost of living calculators. Okay, if you had a job in Boston versus a job in Boise, what would you need to earn in each of those places to have the same standard of living? These are ways that you just start to give your kids some career awareness, money awareness around salary and income that will really serve them well when they start making those decisions.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Definitely something that needs to be taught to and integrated because again, that financial awareness is gonna be one of those skills that's gonna serve them so well compared to
Yeah,
a lot of,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And then back to the question about for adults, just going back to the six pillars, the second pillar is what I call master the inner game. And this is where you are paying attention to your thoughts and assumptions and beliefs. And it greatly affects your confidence, your ability, how you show up, your so there's some inner pieces there that I think are important and we can also do with our kids and teens that help them show up in more powerful ways in their lives. The third pillar we talked about, which is exploring options and deciding your most strategic entry point. The fourth pillar we also talked about a little bit, and this is build your team. It's how do I build the relational bridge to where I want to go next?
Yeah.
And for adults, we sometimes call this networking, but I sometimes don't like to use that word because it causes people to cringe and it sounds so
People can go with
transactional.
the business cards, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's not about being transactional. It's about how do I connect? Once I've decided the sandbox I want to play in, now how do I connect with the people, the organizations, the companies, the professional associations that are also active in that sandbox? Because if I want to be there, I need to be a part of a network of people who are already having that conversation. So
Yes.
that's really important. Again, we nurture that across the arc of our career. The fifth pillar is tell a better story. And this is about how you craft a compelling narrative. This is the marketing and branding piece, which is so important
Marketing,
because
branding yourself.
yeah, because again, I'm being descriptive here. I'm not saying this is great that it's this way, but in the real world, performance matters and so does perception. And so your ability to communicate the value that you can deliver
I
is
agree.
really important. So gone are the days, if they ever existed, where you could create a resume that just listed from top to bottom all your experience. And
Hmm.
that's what I often see. It's, oh, here, I just listed it all out. I have my bullet points that tell you what I did. And that's a little bit like if I just handed you a bag of groceries and you said, all right, what am I supposed to do with this? Okay, I'll have to unpack it. I've got some tomatoes. I've got some ground beef. I've got some pasta. I guess I could make spaghetti or lasagna. No one's going to do that amount of work.
Yeah.
But if I studied you and I knew that you love lasagna and you needed lasagna, and I've done all my self-assessment, and I can tell you I make the best lasagna and I love making lasagna. And I take all my ingredients and I just hand you a piping hot lasagna.
Mhm.
Now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need you.
Hired.
Yeah. So a resume has to be like, what's your value proposition? You
Mhm.
have about 6 seconds at the most that someone's going to scan your resume and then decide yes or no. So we have to get really clear on that value proposition, and then we have to think intentionally about how am I telling that story on my resume. And again, this takes a little massaging and intentionality because we want to decide ahead of time what is that story? When someone looks at my resume or my LinkedIn profile, what are the assumptions that I want them to have about me? We
Mhm.
don't want to leave that up to chance.
Right.
We want to tell them what we want them to think, right? So that's important. And then the sixth pillar is the fundamentals of, I call it sharpen your fundamentals. And these are all the how-tos.
Okay.
How do I do a resume? How do I do a cover letter? How do I do my LinkedIn profile? How do interviewing skills, negotiating skills? These are all very important. This is where most university career centers will focus their time and energy. And I have heard countless stories, as I'm sure perhaps you've heard or even experienced, of people who said, yeah, I went to my college's career center and it was a complete waste. It was so not helpful. And often that's because they focus on pillar number six almost to the exclusion of the other ones. And it's important, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. And it can often be difficult when people try to start there. Oh,
Because it's
like
hard
the
to be, you could
mom.
have a beautiful resume, but if you don't know what job you're applying for or what job feels good to you, your
Yeah,
that skill's not going to take you too far.
exactly. Exactly. So these six pillars are a bit of a roadmap. If your listeners are interested, the careerplanningstudio.com/more, I did an entire webinar on the six pillars,
That's
and you can access that for free.
so wonderful.
So take
Oh,
a look at that if that sounds like it would be helpful to
or
you.
even something they could watch with their teens.
Oh, absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, but talk about it too. Okay, what does that look like for a teenager? And also, how are they prototyping their interests and encouraging them to try a lot of different things so they have more to reflect on?
Yeah, that's so key. Yeah, because if they don't have those experiences, they can't really know. Yeah, like we said, do I like this? Do
No,
I don't know.
I have no idea. I haven't done anything. So trying things, volunteering, participating in things, and then also having the freedom to say, I didn't like this. I,
Yes, that's so
I'm not gonna,
important. No, I don't want them to be quitters, but it's nothing. This is learning. Learning is
yes,
trying. It's not quitting, like just because it
yes,
doesn't make you a quitter for the rest of your life. It's not
ex
quitting. You have to reframe it
yes,
as trying. I'm
yeah,
trying. I'm sampling.
right.
I'm sampling little portions of my feast here. I may like
Mhm.
this. I might not like that, but I'm going to take a bite of all these and just see what I think. But oh, I
Yeah,
really like that. I'm going to have an extra helping of that.
yes, yeah, exactly, exactly. And for adults to let themselves do that as well.
Yes, it's so
Um,
much harder as an adult to play and try, isn't it?
Yeah, we rarely allow ourselves to do that. Our brains are really quick to just say, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah. And I encourage people to get to slow that down. There's a time and a place to think about feasibility and what's practical, and we'll get there. But we have to start with wh- what would you just love to do? How would you enjoy? What would need to be true about your life 12 months from now or 24 months from now for you to say, oh my gosh, I love my life. I can't believe, not perfect, because perfect doesn't exist, but what would need to be true about your life for you to just genuinely feel like, oh my gosh, I love what I get to do. I love the time I spend here, how I feel. Like you really feel good about that. Okay. That's not a surprise. It doesn't just happen. We design for that. And the only way to design for that is to first get in touch with what would that need to look like? And this is a piece of pillar two, the inner game, which is called creation. It's curating a vision of what your life needs to look like for you to just love your life. It's unique to you.
Yeah,
There's a researcher at Harvard, Dan Gilbert. He's a psychologist who calls himself a future self researcher.
that's
And he talks about how the more connected we are to our future self, the more we adjust in the present to match it. So it's almost like without any effort, if I have a very clear picture of the life I want, and I really spend time living into that vision, feeling it in the present moment, without any effort at all, I start to make adjustments in the present to match it.
that's so good because we ask our kids all the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? But we never ask our kids, who do you want to be when you grow up?
Right? Yeah.
What kind
Yeah.
of life do you want to have when you grow up? Those are really important questions because if your goal, like, I want to have a job where I can spend time at home with my kids, that's really going to impact which career path you choose because there's some
Yeah.
that do really well and some that don't. But like, if that's
Exactly.
where you want to be when you grow up, you may never ask that question of, does this actually fit with
Does
the
it
thing that I
fit?
want?
That's such a good point, Julie, because it's never just what do I want my job or my career to be? It's what do I want my life to look like? And that's a bigger question. So we do take into account things like your priorities. Do you want to have a family? Do you think you want to have kids someday? And if so, what would that look like? And we really want to factor in all of those pieces. So we're doing career planning from a really holistic place.
Like what you said, like, where do you want to live? Because that will impact it too.
Yeah,
Certain jobs are only in certain locations, right? Or certain, like you said, you could afford to live in
that's right.
Boise and do that job, but you might not be able to afford to live in Boston and do that job. So those are like all really
Yes.
important questions to ask yourself and your kids. And I love what you said
Yeah.
too about, and we'll close with this question because I think parents struggle with this sometimes, and I know I have. Possibility versus feasibility. So if your kid is, I remember when my son was little, I think he was like 5, but we're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he was like a flower. And we all, it's 4 older sisters. So we all just thought that was the most adorable thing ever. And now we just tease him relentlessly about it. But
Yeah.
it's what would it be like to be a flower? Why do you want to be a flower? And it was
Yeah.
like, or my kids, my one daughter was like, I want to be a zookeeper. She is like the most girly girl ever. And I'm like, a zookeeper? Like they get, in my mind, I'm like, they get dirty. They don't pay very well. I'm naming all these things. And I'm like, tell me
Yeah.
more. What about being a zookeeper really appeals to you? And how would that
Yeah.
fit vision for your life? And ask questions. But in my head, I'm going,
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you balance when you're listening to your kids possibility and feasibility?
Yes. Yes. Those are really good things. Obviously, when they're little and your little one says, I want to be a superhero when I grow up, we just affirm the impulse behind that and what appeals to them about that. Or, like you said, ask questions. What do you like about that? Yeah, animals are fun, aren't they? And I don't know that you need to do too much with that. But as they get older, that's when, you really can say, that's interesting. Let's sit down and go to the ONET and just see what we can learn about zookeepers. And then as we curate that list of, oh, this is the reality of what zookeepers do and what they need to study. And then we're just comparing it to what we know of our own or our child's interests and skills and strengths and superpowers. Because again, the filter that we're using is what do they naturally attend to? When left to their own devices, what do they do? And then let's really be a student of that.
Do those two things match?
Yeah, yeah. Do they match? Do they match? Because our goal for our kids is that they're going to pursue work that is so aligned with who they are that it's not going to be work that drains them. And this is why it matters so much, because if you are in a job that is not aligned with your superpowers, your self-esteem is going to take a hard hit, your rate of depression is going to be higher.
Yeah.
Your productivity is going to be low. Your job performance is going to be low. Your mental health is going to take a hit. Your physical health is going to take a hit. That is awful, awful. This is important. This topic of how do we guide our kids into the kind of work that and it's not that we have to own the whole thing, but we can definitely get them pointed in the right direction.
Because we don't know it. They might try this thing and they might not like it, but when they were at that thing, they met somebody else who told them about this career that they went and followed. Like the path is not a straight line.
Yeah, yeah. And if you take nothing else away from this call, the self-directed search.com is a great place to start. It
With my
takes
kids tomorrow.
those 1,000 jobs that the US Department of Labor tracks and puts them into career clusters. And then when you take the assessment, it's helping suggest the cluster or clusters that might be the best fit for your child. So you're not just lost in the fog. You have, oh, okay, here's a place to start. And we hold it loosely. Any assessment that you take, hold it loosely, especially if you're doing it with your kids, because they're still forming. And so it's just suggestions. And if it resonates and feels like it fits, great. And if it doesn't feel like it fits, throw it out. But just knowing, okay, out of the 1,000 things, where should I just start my search? Where should I just start? Okay, let's start there and just take it one step at a time, one step at a time.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I think, like you said, when they're young, you can just, oh, wow, that's great. What would it be
Mhm.
like to be Superman? And just ask
Yeah,
questions. And then when they get older, yeah, let's explore that a little bit and find out a little more about that, but not put damper down their spirit and their interest in the things that we
yeah,
all like to daydream.
yeah.
Days, I wish I
Right.
was a superhero.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, and it's
Or
good,
not. I mean, there's a million jobs that like sound super exciting and interesting.
yeah, and then you can even, this is, I think high school is a great time to do this, where you're just integrating it into conversations about money,
Mhm.
about income, about, yeah, the reason that we live in this neighborhood is we have this job that provides this income, and we feel good about that. If we had this job over here, your income would be X, and here's what you could do. And some people care about that, and other people you're just helping them connect the dots between the work that I do, the value I deliver, the income that I earn, my choice in all of that, and the proper placement of that in we don't want to go down the path of money is the only thing that matters, income is the only thing that matters, but also we don't want to make the opposite mistake and say it doesn't matter at all. And then they're surprised when they a path and they can't afford to move out of your home. Like that. So these are just good conversations to have so that they're making intentional choices. They may still decide to be that stereotypical starving artist, but we just want them to do it knowing, for it to be an intentional choice so that there aren't any surprises.
Yeah, this has been such an amazing conversation. I know this is going to help my parents so much. So thank you for taking the time to jump on. How can they find you and the free resource that you mentioned?
I am mostly on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit on Instagram, Career Planning Studio. But the best thing to do is go to careerplanningstudio.com/more. You can access the webinar that I do on the 6 pillars. I also have a free exercise you can download on one simple exercise to figure out your superpowers. So there's a couple of things on there you can take advantage of. I also do, in addition to working with clients one-on-one, I have a career mastermind that I run a couple times a year. And it's ideal for people who are just trying to figure out what is the next step going to be? What's the next chapter? And at that site that I just gave you, you can also get details on that, or you can reach out, Melissa at careerplanningstudio.com. Happy to provide resources, ideas, if you have questions.
You're so kind. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This has been a great conversation, and it's fun to just learn a little bit more about your homeschooling world as well. My hat is off to you.
Thank you. Hello. Thanks for listening to today's episode of The Feast Life. I hope that conversation helped give you some ideas of how you can help prepare your kids to make decisions about their career. Let's wrap up with some key takeaways. So number one, start with self-awareness. True career fits begin with identifying your child's superpowers, activities that energize them and make them feel strong, not just things they perform well at. Number two, explore before you invest. Don't wait until college to discover what your child likes or doesn't. Use high school as a time to explore interests, research paths, and even prototype options through shadowing or volunteering. Number three, remember a career path isn't linear. Most young adults will have 12 to 18 jobs and multiple career shifts in their future. The goal isn't picking one thing forever. It's developing lifelong tools to navigate change with confidence. Number four, relationships matter. Experience and education matter, but connections often unlock opportunity. Help your kids build their network early through informational interviews, mentorships, and community ties. And last but not least, use your homeschool to your advantage. Homeschooling gives the gift of time and flexibility. Leverage it to integrate career conversations into everyday learning, whether through research, writing, or real-world explanation. Make sure you check out the show notes for the links that Melissa mentioned in today's episode. Thanks for listening. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this episode, please heart it down below and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment and let me know what you learned in today's episode. I'd love to hear from you.